Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Stryve Golf Podcast. Devin here. Sean, it's just good to be with you this Sunday evening on the Day of Mothers. Shout out to our wives for letting us get our little golf fix in on this sacred day. But how are things? How are things up north?
I think I'm starting to sound like a broken record at this point, but it
Oh
is
no,
still cold
not
and
the
still
weather,
miserable.
not
Yes,
again.
yes. But I do, on one hand, I did get me out of the course early tonight. So
That's a win.
always good. And yes, shout
That's
out
good.
all the moms out there that, especially I think of my mom dropping me off at the course
Oh,
bright and early every summer day, picking us up at dusk pretty much. And that was just such a big part of my childhood. So very fond memory. So shout out my
absolutely.
mom
Can't
for
can't
fueling the golf dream.
can't go by without appreciating the love and support and endless love and support from the moms. Yeah, the countless drop-offs, the swinging by, buying food for everyone on the way home, all that stuff. So yeah, just no, we're blessed, man. That's for sure. And I feel bad because you got off the golf course early, and Sydney was probably happy to hear. And then sure enough, I snagged you away for another pod episode. So if we got to expedite a little bit, the listeners will understand. So, because man, that might be tough though. What a week! Like there was some fun things that happened as far as the professional golf side. We'll get into down here. Played some had some fun things to return and report on. Per our last conversation of trying to fight these swing ruts and what does the next week look like when we think we found something. Did I really find something? Did I not? Probably not, but recap that a little bit and making some picks for the week. So some fun stuff to cover, and I think it'd be good. Let's just circle back on that discussion. It was actually really enjoyable. Got some fun people to reach out and kind of express kind of the desire for more of that type of stuff. I know there's like tons. I mean, there's endless golf podcasts, golf videos on tips and tricks and all that stuff, and happy to do that. I'm not the most detailed when it gets down to the swing mechanics like you are. I'd have to default to you on all of that, but it was fun, and it was nice to hear that there was a little bit of value there for some of the folks. So I'd be interested. Some of the things we talked about. You were making kind of in my opinion, quite a big swing change and kind of fighting through some stuff. And the biggest thing, most important thing, trusting that process in a more like competitive round and sticking with it. So I have to hear, man, how did the week of golf go? And hopefully there was some, even despite the weather.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we had that conversation, and then next day being Monday, had the opportunity to go play men's league, right?
Oh
And I
yeah.
was super pumped to kind of try out or continue working on some of these swing mechanics that I've been kind of molding lately. And so I was really excited to try this out in a tournament setting. And I mean, as luck would have it, the winds just picked up something fierce Monday afternoon. So like by the time I got to the course, like the wind was seriously whipping, right? So I'm like, okay, this will be fun, right? So that's already kind of a rough start as far as, okay, am I even going to be able to hit any stock shots, right? Because it was that windy. And I get onto the range more so just to try to warm up, right? Because I'm coming straight from work. So I just wanted to hit like 4 golf balls before we went up to the number 1 tee, tried to find a window. So I had a little wedge in my hand, and of the 4 balls I hit, I legitimately shanked 2 of them. And I hit one incredibly fat and then just one that felt terrible. And so I'm thinking, okay,
The
this
full
is some
face
good
cover.
mojo, good mojo. But it was funny because it was so windy. I can't exaggerate enough. It was some of the windiest conditions I've ever played golf in, which it was kind of crazy to think about because how much
Even
golf I've played.
there's been
But
some windy days up there.
yeah, so it was that windy. And so it was funny because I walked off that range session and I was like almost laughing, right? Because it was like,
Hope, hope you brought enough golf balls.
yeah, that was the thought. I literally rated, because at the course I work at, we store all our range balls kind of in our cart garage, and then we fill the range machine as needed. And that was my thought as I rolled up to the course. I'm like, crap, I forgot to restock my bag. So I went and combed through the range ball bin real quick, just because
There's a
occasionally
couple gems there. Yeah,
people
maybe.
will hit good golf balls. And sure enough, and maybe this was a sign of things to come that day. I kid you not, right on the top row of golf balls, like 2 brand new Pro V1s. And so I
It's a
quickly
double stat.
pocketed those. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that'll work out. So I'm like, okay, I got my golf balls. And I mean, it was funny just walking off that range. I was almost laughing because I was like, man, this is going to be such a joke, right? With how crazy the wind was. And I just going to go have fun trying to hit shots or whatever. And so yeah, I got onto number 1 tee, and it was a hard left to hard left to right wind for me. And just thought, okay, I'm just gonna hit stingers all day. And still trying to incorporate the swing shot where it's more of an outside takeaway, but just abbreviating the follow through to keep it low. And first swing of the day, I mean, this is always a tough ask, right? Trying to hit a stinger 5-iron off a tee box off your first, after shanking a bunch on the range, right?
That's quite the ask.
And so I hit it, and it just came out so pure and did exactly what I wanted and just rolled forever on the fairway. So I was like, oh, well, hey, we're in business, I guess. Let's see what we can make happen from here. So roll up to the ball in the middle of the fairway, and I got 75 yards, and it's a downhill shot, and the wind, seriously, broken record at this point, but the wind is whipping hard left to right. So I'm like, I don't really know what to do here. I'll just kind of hit like a sawed off 60 and just aim way left and let the wind bring it back. And sure enough, I probably started it off 15 yards left of the pin, and it hit the wind and just started coming back, landed 10 feet short of the hole, bounced up, and found its way to the bottom of the cup. So it's
Another
starting
stat. That's a
off
2.
with an eagle. And so I'm thinking, okay,
Incredible.
this was nothing like I'd planned for on the range. And then at that point, I'm like, all right, well, I'm thinking that certainly helps the score, right? Because I know it's going to be tough, but if I'm starting 2 under right off the get-go, then it gives me more leeway to play with, right? And I don't know if it was that thought or what, but then hit a good drive on 2. And I mean, I hit it down. Granted, I'm playing up a box from where I normally play, but I hit it so far down on this next hole. It's this par 5. I hit it down to a spot I've never been in, and had an iron into a par 5 and knocked it up onto the green and 2-putted. So at this point, we're 3 under through 2 holes. I'm like, oh, all right. Well, hey, I've got more shots to play with in my quest to break 50 today in these conditions.
Gain some shots on the field there right off the rip.
And then, yeah, it just happened to be one of those days where the shot making was really good. And the best example for me was on this another hole. It's a really tricky one. So left to right wind again. It's number 5 at South Mountain for your reference, right? Mm-hmm. So I talked about this hole last week, right? Where that's kind of where I found something with the driver. But today, or last week when I was playing, wind super hard off the left and kind of into me. And that's just not a wind I feel super comfortable with driver, because especially when it's kind of coming in and from the left, like my tendency is to sort of low snap hook it as I'm trying to fight through the wind. So thought, I mean, what the heck, maybe I'll just try to hit this 4-iron stinger that's been working for me so far today, and hit a really good one that rolled forever on the fairway. And so I had about 190 in, same wind conditions, and it's a really narrow run up to the green. So I was thinking, well, I mean, it's probably pretty good 5-iron or 6-iron potentially, right? Where I just throw it up into the wind and let it hit it and come down. But the other thought was like, man, that's kind of a narrow landing zone. And anytime you throw it up into the wind, right, you kind of lose some control of the shot. So I thought, well, maybe try keeping it on the ground again. And it's one of my favorite shots I've ever hit. I had 185, 190 in, and I probably hit it 130 in the air, just really low, and it landed 50, 60 yards short and just rode the mounds perfectly and just barely got up over the false front of the green to about 15, 20 feet and 2-putt par to get out of there, which, I mean, I was super stoked on. And so it was just ended up being one of those days where the conditions were so tough, and maybe it was part of the attitude I took into it, but I swung, just didn't feel like I had a lot of tension going, and I executed a lot of shots that I was trying to. And I mean, the funny thing is I putted just absolutely atrociously. Like I made 3 bogeys and they were all 3 putts, right? And so like the putting was awful, and then go figure, on 9 I drop a 35 footer for birdie to shoot 1 under. So it's just one of those
Nice.
days where it's like the
Heck yeah.
putting was terrible, shot making was good, and then on the last hole I made a long putt, shot 1 under, and ended up winning the week by 2 shots. So it was
That's
I
sick.
it was crazy, but I do think a lot of it just comes down to kind of that mentality and really trusting the swing, right? Like knowing what you're trying to do and then
Yeah.
making the swing to follow it. And kind of as a follow up, I was able to get some more swings up kind of later in the week, mostly at the range where conditions were a little more favorable. And same thing, just trying to work on that takeaway. And early returns have been good for me. So I've got another big tournament coming up next weekend, so it'll be put to the test again. But I mean, so far I feel like
Awesome.
I found something kind of mentally to kind of attach onto as I start the swing. Because I mean, as I've been thinking of our conversation, I know, sorry, I'm going on and on,
Oh,
but as I've been thinking
I love
more
it.
about our conversation that we had last week, I think it's just trying to find some good thoughts, right, at address, right? Because you want to be able to swing freely, and to do that, you need to get rid of as much tension as you can. So I think one thing that I tried to do is just find a thought, right? And right now it's just getting the takeaway in a good spot and just letting everything else follow. And I mean, I know there's going to be ups and downs, but it's been nice to see early returns as good as they have been.
Yeah, that's a heck of a return there. Wow, yeah, that's awesome, man. I'm just my biggest takeaway is I'm just upset that I missed it. That's all. That just doesn't seem right. But that's awesome, and now it even just reiterates that you're just the old European soul, man. You're just made for links golf. You're made for the ball on the ground, getting creative, hitting stingers, and shooting under par. So that's that's super impressive. And it's interesting as you kind of talked. It kind of seems like it's almost morphed into, at least in my mind, like last week it was more technical, it was more swing thoughts and swing mechanic thoughts. I don't know, but it seems like it kind of ultimately always boils down to more of a mental thing, which I'm super intrigued on the mental side of golf, and I hesitate on how much to go into this because I know there's so much there, and we have an upcoming episode with a guest that I'm just beyond stoked about, and it's kind of all he focuses on. Um, but anyway, that's kind of the what I'm hearing is, yes, there's obviously the physical part of the swing mechanics and things that you're trying to do, but it sounds like the attitude, you just kind of let go, you trusted it, and you know you were it seems like the expectations were not super high. I mean, with it blowing 40-mile-an-hour winds at South Mountain, like that's shooting par is was probably even your thought at all. So it's super cool to see that. um and I'm interested to see how it continues, because like you said, it's definitely going to ebb and flow. And I just kind of feel like, kind of coming from where I came from the last episode, I was talking about, yeah, I played this 9 holes and I thought I found something and it was incredible and I had a great 9 holes. So I had the weekend to kind of think about it, and then this last week I get out, and long story short, I ultimately took a day off from golf and went to the driving range. Didn't play, just went to the range, which, if you know me, that's not in my agenda, if ever, but it's what I ended up doing. And of course, picked the hottest day, and it felt like a true grind. Like it felt like a workout, just fighting some stuff, but it, just beating down beads of sweat and all that stuff. But it was good. And I felt like that practice range kind of helped, kind of reiterate some things, solidify some things, and finally had a good round on Saturday, and was actually able to shoot under par 2 for 18, which had kind of been a little bit, and I was a little worried, but yeah, I feel like it's in a good spot. But I don't know, ultimately after it all, it just seems like it's more mental than anything. And I think that may be a common theme as we kind of go on with our stuff, and um kind of just reflecting on that. I think the mental thing is just such a such a vital piece that everyone can vibe with, like, because everyone can relate to shooting their best round the way that they felt. And it's funny because we as humans, we just don't get it, right? We have to continue to go back to those things because we can do it one week and we're like, oh yeah, low expectations, swinging freely, letting go, having maybe one or two things that we're thinking about, that those are the best results. And then, we go back the next day and it couldn't be more opposite, and we're frustrated and saying some fun words and, anyway. So it's interesting. And I think we're going to continue to come back to it, but I'm glad to hear it worked out and you have some quick returns. That's awesome.
And to me, that's one of the reasons why I both love and hate golf, right? It's just how it can change so much day over day. And
yeah,
the best way I can describe it is it's truly just as individual of a sport as it gets, right? It is
brutally
100% on you, right?
Yes.
You are the sole
Yes.
author of your fate on the golf course.
And boy, is it transparent.
Yes. And
Not a lot of room for the imagination there.
It's just so wild because it seriously does lead to things like this, right? Where you can have your best round ever one day and go out the next day and just whatever the reason, it just feels slightly different and the result is way different, right? And
yep.
I mean, I'm sure there's like a science or some kind of physics in a golf swing thing where small change at the speeds in which we're swinging, right? Like it can make a big difference and all that. But man, it's crazy. But at the same time, as frustrating as it is for me, and I let it frustrate me more than it should, at the same time, it is one of my favorite things about golf because I just feel like every day is different and every day is a new challenge on the golf course. And that's just something I enjoy about it.
100%. I saw that very evident this last week, like going from like playing on Monday afternoon. And one of the buddies I play with, Tyson, I mean, he kept saying it was, I kind of took that swing thought and it was so interesting, like this paradox, because I was absolutely flushing it. I airmailed. Honestly, I mean, I've had to think back, but there was for sure at least 4 or 5, either numbers or greens that I just totally airmailed. And it was like, whoa, it's been a little bit since I've caught it in the center of the face. I'm not playing for this like fat, toey 2 club, or at least a minimum of 1 club, that I have to club up. I'm like, oh, well, I can't, it's 165. I don't have to absolutely rope this, hit this 8-iron really, really pure. And, and then this last week I same number and the 8-iron just flew it. So, but it was so frustrating and I scored bad. And yeah, I was pretty frustrated and, took the next few days off. I was like, man, I just need to, I don't know what's going on, but I thought I found something and I lost it. And just like that, like literally within 24 hours, it came and went. And I think it's kind of come back, but you're right. It is so on you. It is so brutally honest. You are the author of your fate. And again, it's so cool to have something, just the immediacy of feedback and application that you can do within golf is just, to me, is the coolest thing, and it's never ending. So anyway, don't want to get too much into, too deep into the mental stuff, but I do think it's worth, continuing to think about, talk about, reflect on, and just share some advice, and share some success stories like you had. And I think it will be really beneficial. And anyway, so I think we'll kind of come to that. And I think we've thought of some of this, some fun things. Just again, as I mentioned, some of the tips. You and I always joke we like Parks and Rec, and the guy who does thoughts for your thoughts. And so we do, swing thoughts for your thoughts. And I think that might be a segment we might come out with in more videos. So, go to the TikTok channel for some more of those, because I think that'll be a fun segment. But anyway, hope it resonates, hope it helps. But I think it's just fun and good, selfishly good for us. Like, I think maybe that I'm not going to say I'm taking credit for your round on Monday, but some of these like conversations I think can help, and just working on it. So anyway, I think it's
sure
really, really fun. But
one last thought I had too, just from this round and just in general, right? The objective of golf, right, is to put the ball in the hole. And so I've been fortunate enough to hole out, I mean, a decent number of times, right, from pretty far away. And just every time I'm caught by so much surprise, like I don't even know how to respond, right? I just like I'm shocked. And so I think it's so funny how like the objective is to put the ball in the hole, but then sometimes when it happens, I'm like, whoa, wait, did that just happen?
Oh,
That
damn.
wasn't supposed to happen, right? No, like that's the whole objective.
That's the
So
whole
I don't know.
purpose.
It's just funny. There's been a lot of my holdouts that I've had. It's more shocking than
Yeah.
anything. Like, well,
It's like
wait,
the
did that just
stupid,
happen?
it's like the stupid Happy Gilmore thing where he hits that hole in one on par four and he's like, that's so much easier than putting. I should just make it in one shot every time. And it's like, you know, such this, we just make so much more out of it. But anyway, it's so cool that golf is such a game of misses and really just depending on how we react to it. And that's kind of I think a good lead in, kind of a good segue, because dude, I'm just so jacked for my boy, for Max Homa. If there's not a guy that epitomizes this conversation more, I don't know who. Like, I don't know who could take the cake, because this dude has come full circle, and it's been so fun to like watch and follow, just him. And that's why I'm so like I love this part of social media, this part of podcasts, because the last couple of years, 20, particularly a lot of 2019 into 2020, his Get a Grip podcast, to really get to see the true Max Homa. So you kind of feel like who he is, like as a dude. And just hearing him, like same stuff we're talking about. Like I remember him talking about some of the rounds at the I can't remember I think it's the 3M, the one that's in like Minnesota. He was in contention, and he ended up not winning, but he goes back and kind of recaps a lot of that stuff the next day on the podcast. And it was so informative. And like, it was like, whoa, like my mind was blown. I'm like, dude, I love this guy. Like, he is the coolest dude. And, his post, the post game, I guess, post winning the first thing he says, like, I just got a good life and I'm playing good golf. Like, that is everything that we're striving for. Cause we can definitely relate. I mean, we're not on tour, but we got, we're pretty blessed. We got some pretty good lives. And so anyway, I love the dude. So pumped for him. I'm sure this may have been kind of a snooze for others that don't know or like Max Homa or freaking Keegan Bradley. Like, I don't know, I'll save my takes on him, but ultimately not a fan of him. So I was just rooting so hard for Max. So it was just so enjoyable. And to, pick him last week, got good vibes to have him repeat at a tough course. So take us there, man. Take us to Wells Fargo and kind of your thoughts and takeaways from the tourney. Because I'm jacked,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah. And just to kind of wrap up the thought on Homa too, and we'll get more into him obviously as we talk about it. But to me, he kind of epitomizes the most down-to-earth guy on tour in my mind. I feel like he's so self-aware, and he's someone that, like, hey, I play golf for a living. I make a pretty good living. I really like playing golf. Life is good. And like, he's got a pretty dry sense of humor, but it is so good. And another part of his interview today too, that I just absolutely loved. And I think it's mostly CBS. The announcers are always talking, like, when a player has a new kid or whatever, they're always like, oh, this player's got more perspective now that he's a parent or whatever.
I mean, Rory has just,
Yeah.
I feel like I know his kid better than, he does.
So these announcers love talking about it. And so sure enough, come to find out, Max Homa and his wife just found out that they're pregnant, right, with their first child. And so they were asking him, what does it mean to, win on Mother's Day, and now you're going to be a dad or whatnot. And just, he totally deadpans, and he knew he was doing this on purpose. He's like, the perspective is flowing or whatever, right? He was totally just
flowing
like
all day.
He just totally kind of poking fun at that running perspective joke. And so I know like the guys that know laying up, they're going to get an absolute kick out of that. So I'm sure they'll get into that, but it just things like that, and hearing him talk in interviews and stuff like that, you get so much of that. And I loved too, like his tapping when he tapped in to win, just like the way he was shouting, like, come on or whatever. Like, he was so pumped, and it was just, I don't know, you just tell it means a lot to him. And that's really cool to see. And I mean, it's not fair to a lot of, I think, professional athletes in general, right, where they're not looking like it matters to them. Like, it really does. They've trained themselves to kind of temper that emotion, right? But it's just, it's really nice to see kind of that exhibited by professional athletes. So I thought that was really cool on Max. But honestly,
Yeah.
the tournament ended up being way more interesting to me than I was expecting, because one, that golf course looked awesome on TV, right? Like all these greens were cool shapes, the bunkering was awesome, and so many of the greens were like elevated, so that made for some really cool shots.
The
Looked like
tee
there was
shots
what?
looked
Oh,
dreadful. I'm like,
it looked like there was water hazards every tee shot.
and tree lined, the thickest of trees. Yeah.
And then on top of it, they got like 4 inches of rain Friday, Saturday. It was cold, it was windy, conditions were super tough. And you're just watching these guys like
Conditi.
having to bunt it out there, just trying to keep the ball in play. So it was, I mean, it was awesome. A ton of fun to watch. A lot of really good golf, a lot of not so good golf, right? Like Jason Day
Oh,
on Thursday,
I hate to see
when
it, man.
conditions were good, he shot 7 under and then followed up with a pretty good round Friday. And then Saturday it got even colder and it looked like he was trying to golf in a full ski outfit and couldn't make a swing at all. And he shot
A little
9 over or
restrictive.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that was rough.
I don't know. I wouldn't like to watch every week in bad conditions, but I do feel like kind of your really good ball strikers kind of rise to
Hmm.
the top for conditions like that. And I mean, Keegan Bradley, as much as we don't really care for him, like he played some incredible golf
Yeah.
Saturday.
Hmm.
And Rory, after struggling to make the cut, he came out and played really well on the weekend too, hit some good shots. And I mean, all chasing Max, he just did a lot so well. I felt like he was in complete control of the game. I loved a lot of the driver swings he was hitting. He was hitting a really low, pretty penetrating driver that was dead straight and finding fairways, keeping it in play, keeping the ball in front of him, and it was fun. I'm almost bummed. I kind of wish they'd make this course a regular stop on tour, because I really liked the way it came across on TV.
Yeah. And it'd be interesting to see it in maybe slightly different conditions. But yeah, I mean, ditto there, like just so good, so fun to watch him. And just, yeah, the driver swings, you could tell because Max kind of low key goes at the ball. Like he swings pretty hard and his ball speed is up in like 180 something. And we know, I mean, Victor, the dude who is by far the longest out of us. And he's like, dude, I swing my absolute hardest and I barely got to 180. And it's just like, dude, that is crazy. Like that's some interesting perspective. And Max gets there pretty regularly, but today was a little bit lower. And it was just these more controlled swings. And he just stuck into it. Loved him and Joe's conversations were really cool. And yeah, his ball striking was just awesome, because there was some points on the front nine where, yeah, I mean, I think he doubled and then bogeyed, but then he came back with some really good birdies. And Max drops down and makes a kind of a really bad bogey, and Bradley birdied, had some back to back. So it was there, and that's what I'm saying. Like he wasn't crowned anyway. It wasn't just a walk off easy win. The back nine, he really stuck with it and got the job done. So yeah, that was it really was really enjoyable. And yeah, it really was fun to watch that course on, because some of the, like number 11, that hole looked so hard. And I think that's what did, like Max's up and down from that bunker was incredible. And and Keegan makes this, hits this kind of this terrible drive out to the right, takes his 3-iron. His caddy's like, yeah, aim left of that bunker. He's like, I'm going to go a little right of it. Sure enough, block city, 30 yards short, right in the water, makes double. And I mean, that hole was playing so hard. So that was really cool to watch that, again, like a little bit of cards. I think that tied to Arnold Palmer that day. On Saturday for, I think only 4 dudes broke par. Like that's tied for that. Like, so again, maybe not every week, but I think to golf junkies like us, like that just ate that up. It's super fun to watch. So
It's fun to watch professional golfers have to hit not stock shots,
yeah,
basically, right?
yeah,
Where
get a little creative.
whether it's wind or whether they're facing some kind of obstacle or whatnot, it's just fun to watch guys have to execute shots where you can't just hit it straight at the pin. And so
Yeah.
it was fun.
Yeah. which is interesting because this, like, you feel like that again, kind of defaulting to what we were talking about before, like links golf. Like, I feel like you get that, but that course couldn't have been more opposite of
No,
links
yeah.
golf. But I mean, it was classic country club American golf. But yeah, it still did require a lot of, a lot of those types of shots, which I thought was interesting.
And I wanted to get your thoughts too, because I know we have fun with this one with talk about like how much I love hitting off wet turf, right? Because I love taking big divots. But you've got this mental thing, right, where you don't love the wet grass, at least in the past.
Yeah, it's
So I
gotten
just
better.
I wanted to get your thoughts as you're watching that all week. Is like, man, these guys are taking 2 foot long divots, right? Because the sod is so soft. And like,
Yeah.
what were your thoughts? Were you scared at all?
Oh, I was terrified. The embarrassing thing is I'm taking those in the most dried up turf down here in St. George. I'm taking dollar bills for days in the most, just the hardest, driest of conditions. So you get that sopping wet turf. I get a little afraid because I'm just, yeah. I mean, for those that don't know, especially with wedges, I'm a pretty steep guy and I take divots. I've been classified as a digger from some professional fitters. I thought that was interesting, but yeah, I hit pretty aggressively down and through the ball and create some big divots. So if there's not a lot of, give back from the turf, I tend to hit them a little chunky. So when they're playing ball in hand, I'm a little nervous. If I'm in a tournament and it's, lift clean in place because of the soft conditions, it's a little nerve wracking. But I will say last year at the Bloomington Am, they did that for the first day. And it was, I was a little nervous because the course was very soft and a lot of mud balls. But I think I'm figuring out a little bit. So yes, ultimately I'm glad that was not me hitting those and just absolutely soaking my outfit, because I've done that a time or two too, where it's just like I get pegged with mud and dirt in my clothes. I'm like, how does that even happen? I guess a steep angle of attack is not ideal for those conditions. So
And
yes.
I got a kick out of it too, watching, because I actually watched quite a bit of this tournament, but watching Friday, some of those guys coming down the stretch on the cut line, part of me wonders where, all right, you've seen the forecast for Saturday and Sunday, and it's not great. How
I
hard
want
are
to
you
fly
going to
home.
grind? How hard are you going to grind to make that cut?
That is so interesting you said, because like that's why I was like, shout out to Rory for doing that, for making that sick par, get it on the number, and sticking with it mentally, still being there and playing solid in terrible conditions. So I think that was really cool. Interesting you bring that up.
Yeah, I wonder the human side of things.
Because
It's
I'm
like,
not. I'm taking the first flight
see,
out Saturday morning.
I might even be able to catch a Friday night flight if we pick up the pace here, guys. Let's go.
Grab my dinner and
Ooh.
head out. Yeah, no, that's funny. But yeah, ultimately it was good. A lot better. Again, I don't know how much the average Joe golfer would thinks it was as good as we did, but I don't know. I honestly did enjoy it, and of course, just way more engaged. I'm not gonna lie. If it was, Keegan Bradley and that, I mean, I don't know who else, James Hahn or whatever, I may not have been as engaged, but watching some of his up and downs were incredible. But I may not have loved it as much, but Max definitely makes it bigger. So that's, again, another reason why I love when dudes are transparent, allow them to be themselves. They're not trying to all fit this perfect mold of the perfect PGA Tour gentleman. I think it's cool when we can get to know someone and root for them. And it makes tournaments like this way more engaging. So that was kind of my takeaway.
Yeah, and I think it might be time to start having a conversation just how good Max Homa is. Like
He is that guy.
he's
Dude,
probably one of the best players in the world. Listen to some of this stuff. So Kyle Porter, he writes for CBS. He tweeted this out.
it's a good
So
follow.
this is,
He's a good
yeah,
follow.
really good follow. So worldwide wins since January 1, 2021. So these are the guys with 4 wins. Cantlay, Scheffler, Hovland, solid players, right? Here's the guys with 3 wins in the last 15, 16 months. Colin Morikawa, Sam Burns, Hideki Matsuyama, and Cam Smith, and Max Homa. So Max Homa's got 3 wins in the last 15, 16 months, and I'm not sure if the world
Good
rankings I
company.
was just looking up, but he's listed at 38th. I'm sure that was maybe going into might be going into the sweep. But anyway, so he's climbed into the top 40 into the world. He's probably really making a good claim that he should be on the President's Cup team later this year. Like, I have to
I'm
argue
fighting for it.
he's probably a top 12 American player right now, especially if you get guys like DeChambeau who are kind of hurt long term and stuff. But
And what a good teammate. Like,
yeah,
who doesn't like spending time around Max Homa? So
he's playing really well, and he's got a solid game. There's a little, he's not as erratic as Spieth by any means, but I don't know, I just get a little bit Spieth vibes where it's like he doesn't necessarily do anything elite per se, but just he just knows his game really well. I think it's no coincidence he's got a really good relationship with his caddy, and they just know how to get around golf courses.
Yep. Agreed. I think, his ball striking is definitely his best part. I think there's times where like his putting may look a little shaky. Like you said, I don't think it's necessarily like elite, but I think he has all the right tools to come a major week that he can, like, it's not outrageous, to pick him. So yeah, I love it. Again, it's kind of like this like new cool secret is out, like with Max Homa, everyone's starting to kind of like him, which is awesome. But in my mind, selfishly, I'm like, I like when he's like low key cool. And the only airtime I remember him talking about, the only airtime he got on one of the tournaments for like years was this. He was in this like deep grass bunker, and he just hit the most classic shank ever. And it was just funny. He was just talking about that. He's like, of course, the only airtime I get is me hitting bad shots. And I just loved that. I'm like, it's so cool. But again, it is cool to see him out winning and yeah, among the top. That's some good company to find yourself in. So shout out to Mr. Homa. So
And I just popped on to see if he had had any good tweets in the last little while. So the tweet he had today, he said, "My soon-to-be born son is going to have a hell of a job topping that Mother's Day. Good luck, kid. Thanks for the support, everyone. I appreciate y'all." So
classic Max Homa fashion there. Oh, dude, he just seems like, again, he just seems like a dude that we would just vibe with, and we could have a good time with him. So hard to root against that. But yeah. So anything else there on that, or should we, kind of move on? Any other thoughts or takeaways on that, on the tourney?
Have you ever played in some heavy rain before?
That's a good question. Well, it seemed like every year at state, I mean, literally freshman through senior year, every year was hail, crazy winds, rain, everything. So yeah. And only one of those years, my senior year, my junior year was the only one that I did somewhat decent. I remember I shot 275s, and I was like blown away with how good that felt. But yeah, other than that, kind of, I don't know. I'd rather have it be rainy than windy, but when it's a combination of the two, that's pretty tough. But yeah, it's like when you're watching it on TV, it's just kind of like, it's not that bad. Like, yeah, you just get a little wet, but just try and keep your glove dry and your club face as dry as you can. But it's like, it's a chore. Like, it is hard work out there to play golf being wet. Like it's a lot harder than it comes off, like face value off TV. But yeah, so not a ton, but just those few rounds in high school playing golf in Utah, the first week of October, you never know what you're going to get. Stupid.
Ooh. I think the wettest I've ever been on the golf course was our last day at Bandon. We were playing, and it never poured. It just started about hole 3, and it was fairly steady for the rest of the round. And I'll never forget, by the end of the round, right, where it's like I just didn't even bother with the golf glove, right, because it's so soaked and everything is so wet, and your bag is so heavy, and your grips are also like you're saying it. I think the pros have it a little easier just because they have a caddy basically solely committed to keeping stuff dry. But yeah, when you're trying to do it on your own, like, it's tough. Yeah, it's pretty tough.
Yeah. So luckily, I guess that's one good thing about down here where I'm at. I don't have to fight that too much, but got to kind of fight some of the wind. But
not to mention, right, we're good golfers, don't get me wrong, but we're also at the stage where it's like Yeah, if that rain's coming down, I just might leave the clubs in the garage that day.
I'll just, yeah, I'm me more than you on that front. But anyway, well, so yeah, and I think we're getting close to a major week, right? Like that's coming up next week or the following. But this week is a cool tournament. You know, the AT&T, the Byron Nelson. It's going to be in McKinney, Texas, where we both had the blessed pleasure to serve amongst those folks. We were kind of joking. Yeah, I don't think any of those people around that golf course are struggling and looking for some answers. I mean, those people they ain't hurting for cash. We'll just say that. So it is kind of fun to kind of reflect back on that, and kind of a funny story with that particular. I remember we were Walker and I, another companion that we both had the chance to serve with, we were knocking doors as missionaries do, and I'll never forget these couple teenagers in this green truck came by and hucked. I mean, we're in the neighborhood right there around that golf course, and they hucked a brand new Pro V1 at us, and it just pegged this wood fence right next to us. Looked down, I'm like, holy cow, that was a golf ball. But so I picked it up and saved it and wrote the ball of discipleship on it and sent it home to my parents. So I still have it. So, shout out to the folks there in McKinney who love those missionaries. But hey, it was a good ball. If nothing else, it was a brand new Pro V. So it was a little message from home and from the golf gods, so to speak. So anyway, hopefully better vibes for the folks there this week. But any thoughts there? Anything? Do you remember much from that? Like seeing that? I know, there's only so much you can do as a missionary, but
Yeah, I mean, one thought I have is that obviously the PGA Tour, because most of where they play are country clubs, right? And so most of where they are pretty affluent areas. I'd have to venture a guess to say that where they're playing this week probably is one of the wealthier areas that they'll play all year, because it is crazy how nice and wealthy it is in that area.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to paint a bad picture of those. I mean, they were teenagers, so you get that everywhere.
Yeah.
But I loved the city of McKinney is probably my favorite city in Texas. I absolutely loved it. If I were to ever move there, that's where I would go. It's just an awesome place with some amazing people. So it's fun to go back and kind of see that at Craig Ranch. So
it is a really cool area, and I've met a lot of cool people there. I'm sure some of them will probably be out at the tournament this week watching. So
I would be. So I mean, we can obviously make some picks, and the home game is real in some of my picks. I just feel like I can't not choose them. So I'll start us off with the dub from last week with Max. So pretty obvious. I gotta go with Spieth, the Dallas boy, the home game. He played decent there last year. That was kind of fun, especially the first few rounds. So I gotta go with Spieth.
Was this, and this is great podcasting, but was this the tournament where he holed like the huge putt in the first round or something?
On the 18th, and people just lost their minds. And it was, I think it was for Eagle, and everyone was there. And
that's right.
Yep.
Okay.
The classic Spieth fashion. I mean,
that's funny.
Epitome of Spieth. He would do that.
All right. Well, good pick there, of course. My first pick, I'm going to go with Sam Burns. Another one of those guys that's won a couple times in the last year and a half. So go with him.
Yeah. Louisiana guy. So close. And then Will Zalatoris. It's hard not to pick him. Just, again, we always know the obvious elephant in the room is how's that flat stick going to do? But hoping not to see too many of as Faldo puts it, the higgly wigglies, but we'll see.
I'm gonna have to come up with our own term, like the Zalatoris ships or something.
Those are scary.
Ooh. All right. Second pick for me. I mean, similar vein. Awesome ball striker. Short game holds him back a little bit. Xander Schauffele. Just really like his game, so it's hard not to pick him every time you see him on the list of players in the field.
Yeah, for sure. And that's like, this field is, I don't know, it's kind of hard not to pick some of the few big names. There's obviously some no names, but there's some good ones too. So what I'm going to go with, this isn't a home game one, but it's JJ Spawn. I don't really think he's going to win, but I do think that he can contend. And I listened to a podcast with him on it, and it's kind of a similar, kind of seems pretty down to earth and kind of a cool dude. So I'm gonna go with him.
Nice. Third pick for me, go with Adam Scott, just kind of the classic pick. Yeah, and to your point, it's, I guess, interesting where you take this week that we just had at Wells Fargo and then rolling into the tournament this week, where like basically you take the top players and like half of them played this week at Wells Fargo, and then the other half are playing this week in Texas. So I'm always interested in how guys sort of prepare leading up to a major, right? Like lots of guys
Right.
like to take a couple weeks off and then play a week before and the major. Some guys will play 2 weeks before the major and then try to practice pretty hard before the week. So I'm always interested in that. And I think you get a good sense of it just in the stretch that we are in the calendar with kind of the split fields between the 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. It is always interesting to kind of see how they do that. And at a course, I don't think they're too similar, but I'm always kind of the thing to kind of get somewhat in form and look around a guy that maybe top 15, top 20 usually is kind of where I like to pick for the next week. But this one's kind of an interesting pick as I kind of wrap up mine. It's a pick that this whole year I never would have scared. I know you picked him once and I think he shot like an 80 something and probably withdrew, maybe not, I don't remember. But Matthew Wolff, he had some cool comments this week and just said that I definitely can vibe with it. Kind of vibes with what we've been talking about this whole podcast of just trying to have fun out there. And it obviously helped. I mean, he was there in contention there for a little bit and had his best week in some time. So if he carries that on into this week, I think he can at least contend. But any thoughts on that? Like kind of what we've been talking about and his thoughts in particular before you make your last pick. I would just wanted your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I'll just throw my last pick out to get out of the way, but I'll go Sepp Straka. Just, I don't know why. I love his name, love his game.
The big man,
Go
the DC
go
carry.
with him.
You catch him with a Diet Coke. I'll never forget that, man. Walks off the 18, wins. First thing he does, gets a nice cold one, and probably his 8th for the day. But I respect.
So I like him. But yeah, I love that you brought up Matthew Wolff, and he had a good press conference like earlier in the week where he was pretty candid just about some of his struggles, right? And a lot of what he was talking about is that he just wasn't in a very good place mentally. He just got the sense that he was not enjoying life, right? Just wasn't loving the aspects of tour life. He maybe didn't have a lot of friends on tour that he could seemingly hang out with, or kind of get the sense that maybe he's a little more kind of small town, kind of just really loves playing golf and just doesn't love a lot of like the extra stuff that come with being on tour. But so he talked about kind of getting help and trying to find himself again. And I think what really stuck out to me in his press conference is he talked about how his negative attitude wasn't just impacting him, but it was impacting his playing partners as well. And
I missed that.
Yeah. I thought that was really interesting to hear. And it seems kind of just like a recent development he's kind of come to realize, but it got me thinking as well. It's like, yeah, man, when we're down in the dumps, it obviously is going to hurt our game, but it can hurt people we're playing with as well. And that's not fair to them. Right. And it, like, don't get me wrong. Like, you can, as part of like pushing yourself to be better, you can kind of get upset and like strive to be better. But when you're so negative to the point that it's like impacting the people around you, that's, I don't know. I think that's something that I've never thought about when I think of negative attitude on the course. So it's like, okay, if I'm not going to be better for the sake of like my game, can I at least be better for the sake of the people around me? Right. Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting to hear him talk about.
Yeah, that's a good point. Shout out to him, because that's definitely not the easiest thing. And and that's one thing to call it out and to recognize it, which is cool. But to actually call something like that out and be that candid, that now there's kind of this expectation where it's like, don't be a hypocrite, dude. Like, don't be mad on the golf course. So I hope again, shout out to him for that. And I hope he, kind of sticks, kind of with that. And he's still going to get mad. But I think to a certain point there is, because I think we've all played with someone who gets very furious, very, very mad if it's throwing clubs, if it's saying something. Like, I mean, we've all been there. We've all seen it. And it definitely does. It is kind of, it gets awkward. It gets like, it definitely does take some of the joy out of the group, especially with like close buddies. So you try to keep that perspective. Because it definitely can. Like, one guy I've always thought about that with is like Terrell Hatton. Like, I love to watch him from the outside and love the hot mics, but I would never want to play with him ever. Like, I feel like he's the type of guy that definitely can influence his playing partners. And so anyway, I think that's credit where credit is due. And I really do. I'm rooting for him. I hope that it bodes well and he comes back, because that's not easy. A lot easier said than done.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, kind of bring up, I think, like, this negativity demonstrates itself in so many different ways, right? There is the obviously visible one of club throwing and stuff, but I think of
Yeah.
I think of how more you and for sure me, and also I don't want to say anything bad about you, but like how you react as
Bring
well.
it
Like
on.
I think we're pretty similar. Like, we just get sulky, right?
Yeah.
Like, we just won't say anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's funny when we get in the cart together, and I mean, sometimes we'll both get sulky at the same time, and that works out just fine, right? We can just get into our own little hissy fits in our head and be fine. There's been some times where I'll be playing bad, and I won't say anything for 6 holes, and you'll be like trying to keep the energy up, and I just shut it down. And then there've been times where like you've done the same thing, right? Where we're just like,
I'll
we
walk.
won't say anything, right? So it's
Oh,
just
for
funny,
sure.
like hearing Matthew Wolf talk about that, and then thinking about my own experience on the golf course. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, yeah, I guess that would not have been fun to be with me at that given moment.
Yeah, no, for sure. It definitely is, because it's not always easy. And I think for, yeah, like times where I've played my best, it definitely is. It's those thoughts and those feelings are never there, which again, like, as golf being an imperfect game that it is, you are going to hit bad shots. You're not going to execute exactly how you want. But being able to just kind of take it how it is, roll with it, and just kind of let go, is yeah, definitely something I'm striving for. And I think, yeah, it's definitely gotten better, but it's not perfect, but we continue with it. So yeah, it's a good point, and shout out to him for that, and more stuff to follow on that, because I think that's such an important part of the game of golf. So, but anyway, I mean, I'm good. You got anything else you want to talk about? Do we have you hate to see it? I mean, there was, I don't know if we had on this episode there. I'm sure we can always pull some, but I don't know if you have any of that, or any shout outs or anything you want to do as we wrap up. But
There's always both. I got a quick, you hate to see it. So
and I got one
I guess,
too, in case go ahead.
So my quick, you hate to see it. Like, I mean, I was grateful that I was able to get out of the golf course early tonight because of weather. But I will say, the last person I was waiting on was just this guy banging golf balls on the range. And it was funny because he'd come in at like, I don't know, 4 o'clock, and he just had one token with him. He's like, hey, I just need
30 balls.
Just need to go down the range. I'm like, okay. I figured he'd be back soon. I didn't even think anything of it. But it got to about 4:30, 4:45, and I was like, man, I've only got one cart left that I'm waiting on, and I don't think anyone's on the course. So let me drive down to the driving range, pick up baskets, and maybe the person's there. And sure enough, that guy's there with way more golf balls than one token would have warranted. So I'm like,
He
yeah,
did a
that's
little
a
picking.
little weird.
He picked the
It's
range.
a little weird. So I'm like, I picked up all the baskets and tried to like really make the point clear, like, hey, you're the only one I'm waiting. You're the only thing keeping me from going home, my guy. And so it's like, oh, I'll hurry. And so sure enough, I get back up to the pro shop, and I've got a vantage point of the range, and I'm watching him hit like 5 balls, and I see him waddle down the hill to pick up a few more and come back up to keep hitting. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. I was trying to like reason, all right, what's the worst thing that can happen if I just lock up and just leave one card out? If one card happens to get stolen, is that the worst thing in the world?
You just write that off. That's no big deal.
Anyway,
you hate to see it. You
Yes.
truly hate to see it. Mine was just a quick. I mean, I'm sure we all heard it. We all saw it. It was on the post. It was on Thursday. Again, never been a huge fan of Sergio Garcia, but you hate to see him throw just a typical Sergio fit. Though he was not in the wrong. I actually read an article about it a little bit more, and the rules official was in fact wrong. He started the time before he got to that side and actually started looking. But I mean, you hate to see it. I mean, his comments and just this. I mean, I don't even know how much he's made in his time at the PGA Tour, but look it up. I mean, I what do you think it is? Can you look at like what's your guess?
I would guess like playing earnings. I'd have to guess like north of 30, 40 million, maybe.
I was going to guess north of
maybe
50 million.
50?
I was going to guess
yeah.
more than 50 million. And it's just like, dude, like, I don't know.
Yeah. Over 50 million.
Oh, okay. Maybe it was in that article. I don't know. But
yeah, it probably was, honestly. Yeah. Over
like,
50
it's ridiculous,
million.
man. Like, I don't know. And just rip to Sergio. I'm never been a big fan of him anyway, but
there was so many good comments like, yes, leave the oppressive PGA Tour where players have no rights or whatever to go play for a tour backed by the Saudi government.
And it was just the best too, right in the press conference with Lee Westwood, just another classic. He bluntly just opened up like, yeah, the Saudis are sports washing, and I'm okay with that, and we're okay with that, and it may scare some people, but like, dude, you it just blows my mind. Like, anyway, I'll stop it there, but you hate to see it. So
on a more positive note,
can I do my hate to wrap up that way. Maybe we should start at the beginning. I don't know.
Yeah.
What's a shout out?
All right. I got to shout out my wife, Sydney. This weekend, we celebrated our 7th-year anniversary. So
let's go.
Shout out her. Who thought maybe, I have no idea if 7-8 years ago, she thought that she married such a golf bum. Like, she knew I loved golf and was kind of married to the game. But I think at this point, she thinks I'm completely married to the game and she's on the side. But
I think I'm there to blame for some of that. So I apologize.
But shout out her for taking care of me and letting me play as much golf as I do. She's the real MVP. So
very, very appropriate for this day of mothers. And I'll just go ahead and second that to shout out Celeste. She's one of a kind. I'm grateful. So we love them. We love to see it. We love the conversations. Again, for the folks, we're making more stuff. Instagram, check out the TikTok. Again, we're doing some fun videos there and getting some fun interaction there too. So and more fun stuff to come. But again, Sean, it's just a pleasure. If you're still listening, we love you. We thank you. And we'll do this again next week.
Peace.
Keep striving.